Arsenal linked to a Serie A player who's wanted by Juventus. My advice, put all your stocks in this happening. This is the Arsenal Vision Post-Match Podcast. My name's Elliot Smith. You can block me on Twitter, Yankee Gunner. Yeah, look, if there's one thing I know, it's if an Italian player wanted by an Italian giant club is linked to a Premier League club, they always go to the Premier League club. They always leave Italy. They always leave Serie A, and they always wind up in the Premier League. So we are going to talk about Riccardo Calafiori, the player having, I think, an eye-opening international tournament, but was quite good at a very good Bologna this past season. So there's a lot of interesting things to talk about with that rumor, and it's not just the rumor, which does seem to have, I mean, I think there's a little fire with that smoke, but it's what it says about how we're trying to build this squad and what role we want players to play and who might wind up moving on then as a result of that and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of good stuff to get stuck into there. There's some other transfer news with outgoings, Raya's move being made permanent. So we're going to discuss that. There's a great Mikel Arteta interview. Ten Hag has been signed to a new agreement. And, we're going to lament United having locked down that superior talent for years to come. So there's a lot to get into. I will tell you, I think we did one of our more fun Patreon episodes in a really, really long time. Clive, fresh back from his holidays, was on top form. We predicted who will arrive this window. We did a transfer prediction, but that's the very end of the pod. Leading up to that, we talk all about who the links are, who the rumors might be, who the targets could be, why we might want them, how that would shift around other talent in the team, and what we really need to do. So it's sort of a tactics and squad building pod that turns into a prediction pod. And we put the predictions at the back for the simple reason that they will wind up humiliating us. So that's how that works. Would love to have you over there for that. There's going to be another history pod coming soon, maybe even today with Tim. So whatever you're doing, wherever you are, I hope you're doing well, and I hope you'll join us for the Patreon as a distraction maybe from anything else going on in your life that you need a distraction from. I know over in England right now as we record this, a lot of people voting. So I hope the election going well for you today. And in the U.S., we are celebrating not being a part of England, technically, in Independence Day, I think as they call it, which I only just found out now is not just when we declared our independence from the aliens that invaded the Earth. It's not just a movie. It's actually a thing that really happened. So there you go. You learn something new every day. And I, dear listener, in case you care about me, I have two puppies. One of them is now not so puppy sized anymore. He's a little over 50 pounds. This guy's just exploded in size. And he has this thing where at night he's too tired to walk up the stairs to bed. So he has to be carried up to bed. And so I was carrying up to bed last night, and he sort of shifted his weight as I was carrying him up the stairs. And I had to shift this 50-pound dog weight to the other side of my body. And as a result, my back is now in complete shambles. So please excuse any groans you might hear from me. It is not me groaning at transfer news. It is me groaning at back pain. Here with me now is Paul. You can find him on Twitter, Pause My Pants. Hello, Pause.
Or are you groaning at my opinions? Could be that.
Well, now we have cover. We can say it wasn't that. Even if it is that, we can say it wasn't that. And let's see. We're going to find out whether your opinions are groan worthy or not. So
before I sense you're going to pivot to something, but before you do, Elliot, so you know about lifting stuff and stuff. You know those movers straps things for lifting furniture and stuff. I bought some, and I lifted some furniture, and they're fucking incredible.
Yeah, so that's good, but like I think it's still better to train your body to rely on technique, which is why I always lift with my arms in a jerking quick motion. And I think if you just do that, you train your body to the proper technique. Now, Riccardo Calafiori.
Before we get to Riccardo Calafiori, you need to socialize the lifting straps with your doggy. He'll get used to them over, a few days in his bed and stuff. You get used to the smell of them and stuff, and then you can start using them to lift your doggy up the stairs.
Got it. Okay. Well, I will. I'll get some lifting straps, and I will see if the dog appreciates being lifted like furniture. So now can I do Riccardo Calafiori?
Yeah.
All right, Riccardo Calafiori. It's Italian international, having a good Euros. I think an eye-catching Euros, even for an Italy team that maybe wasn't fantastic at every step of the way. Plays a little bit of that left center back, left backy kind of thing that we see now, a big center back build left back who can invert a little bit, who can play the left side of a three or just left center back. He's in that left half space, left-sided role. He played at Bologna, where his coach, Thiago Motta, is now going to Juventus, and Juventus apparently linked. But Bologna not super happy that Juventus have stolen Thiago Motta, which means the negotiation is a little bit difficult. Juve obviously not able to offer the money that we're able to offer, given that we are, rich because we're in the Premier League, and all that. So it looks like we are in pole position if you believe the rumors. Chelsea were interested, but apparently we've been able to sell him. I guess something about playing the likes of a Barcelona or a Bayern Munich or Real Madrid in the Champions League versus teams with names that are difficult to pronounce in places that you may not want to fly to in the winter in the Conference League has made us maybe a more attractive option. So I think this is an interesting one, Paul, because I don't know how true it is, but it seems like there's a decent amount of smoke here, but it certainly leads to an interesting conversation about what we might be trying to do with our squad. So let's start with this. What do you think of the rumor? Do you put any stock in this, or do you expect by the time I hit publish, he'll be at Juventus?
It's starting to pull me in. I don't know what you think, but it's starting to feel like it has legs, as does Riccardo Calafiori.
Too? Mm-hmm.
Yep. And so, yeah, I'm kind of pulled into this one. Seems to have momentum. Seems to have the feel of it that this is on. If it's us versus Chelsea, with PSR in the mix, Chelsea ain't like a few years ago. I mean, they'd still throw the cash at it, but they may not be allowed to. We're a more interesting, exciting proposition, I think, as a club, though that doesn't always determine where a player goes. And we have positive history with Bologna, with Tomiyasu. I think that ground's been well covered. So, yeah, it does have a good feel to it. And in some ways, I find it more interesting to discuss the player than kind of you were pivoting to what does it say about our transfer business and maybe that area of the pitch. And yeah, but that's kind of abstract. And like, I actually think there's enough in the player to say, well, what if it's this guy, this player? Because there may not be many Calafioris to the pound, to the lira. I don't know if they probably don't use the lira anymore. They probably use the euro.
Would make a lot of sense being part of the European Union, yes.
It would. I haven't been keeping up on matters there, but yes, Calafiori I think is really, really interesting. And what's also interesting is that's very new ground for me, and I would imagine many Arsenal supporters emotionally, is we have now really reached the stage where any moves now affect a player we already love that is locked in. We saw it a bit with Ramsdale last year with Raya. But like we look at Calafiori, and unless he's going to play, well, even if he's like brought in as just a left back, it starts to impinge on my view of like, but we have this guy or we have that guy. We have Tomiyasu, we have Timber, we have Zinchenko, depending on how you're feeling about them. Now, there's definitely space in there because there's, nobody has that locked down or nobody had it for a season. But you look at Gabriel's spot, and I'll tell you, it hurts. I decided I'm not a winner, Elliot. I don't know if you think you're a winner. I realized I'm not a winner because I'm not willing to do what it takes to win. I'm signed up with Gabriel. Love the guy. There's a lot to talk about around it, and there'll be different players. But like I'm signed up for Gabriel. I don't want I don't want an upgrade on Gabriel. Is basically what my emotions tell me. But we're going to have an interesting couple of years here because our squad, especially the first 11, 14, are at a level where it hurts to think about upgrading these players. I'm not emotionally ready yet to win, Elliot.
Yeah, I get that because the connection we've made with these players is such that you want to see these guys go on and do it. Having said that, if we're lifting things like the Premier League trophy and the Champions League trophy, I will grudgingly fall in love with whichever players are lifting it. So I can be convinced.
And I will too, but emotionally, I'm not like you can raise that trophy and I'll look back on it. That'll be different. I saw you wincing there as you moved in the chair. Sorry about that, Elliot.
Thanks.
But I am not right now from where I am looking forward. Like it's going to be difficult not letting go of, but watching the process of these players get competition.
Yeah.
And maybe this Calafiori thing isn't as real as it feels right this second and won't happen. But this is, when have we had this situation where player after player is going to get, it used to be a phrase, oh, bring him in for competition, but we didn't really mean it. these upgrades may be better than the guy they're competing with. And that's going to be interesting for us as fans.
Well, and this is the thing. This is what makes squad building really hard. I don't want more Cedrics. With the best will in the world, I don't want us to say we could use a little depth at left back. Let's buy a 30-year-old on a free transfer who's at the tail end of a middling career and put him on a decent wage and hope to never have to use them. I don't think you get better that way. I think you get better by having players that are going to go break the door down and say, I belong in this squad. And pretty soon you don't have a choice but to play them. And, Trossard did a little of that, right? In a way. Even Jorginho found a way to do that. But I think this is interesting because, first of all,
but maybe Cedric, like I get you, but maybe we should stop using the Cedric one because it's so, that's so 2018, 2019, 2020. Like, this is no more Kiviors, maybe. And maybe that's not even the perfect one, but like, it's no more a level just below. It'll always be a level just above.
Yeah. Now, to be fair, I mean, we don't know that for sure, right? I think a lot of people might have thought Tomiyasu might be a Kivior. Tomiyasu proved to be quite a bit better. Kivior has proven to not be bad, but be a player who maybe is still developing and isn't at that level that Tomiyasu proved at from a very quick time after arriving. The thing that's interesting to me with this, though, first of all, if you just look at the player and who he is, don't get torn or fooled by thinking, oh, we're just doing this off the back of flashing some skill at the Euros. A lot of big clubs were on to him for the season he had at Bologna. So he started 26 games, made 30 appearances in the league, 2,350 minutes this season. He had been at Basel the previous couple of seasons. This is a guy who had a horrifying knee injury at 16. And I mean horrifying. Every single ligament torn, the meniscus torn, the whole entire knee destroyed. I mean, a lot of comments about it could have been career ending if you read up on this. And so he's been on the long road back. Now, that could be quite scary, obviously. But when you look at him starting 26 games, playing 2,350 minutes, and when the injury happens at 16, I do think the body has a better chance to respond. It looks like he's getting past that. He had one 3-day injury this past season. I think he missed like a game or two. And he's just turned 22. So still very young. 6 feet tall, 22 years old, a good passer, reasonable progressor of the ball, seems comfortable with both feet. He is left-footed, which we know Mikel absolutely insists upon if you're going to play left center back. And I think he'd like if you're going to play left back. The thing that's interesting is we've sort of, I think, been penciling in our mind Jurrien Timber being our left back to start this season. And that's an interesting one. I certainly think he was bought as a right back. And if you think about the time he was bought, at that time, I don't think anyone was necessarily questioning Zinchenko yet. I don't think those questions had risen to the level they have now. And Zinchenko had been a bit of a revelation the season before. So maybe it was more of a rotational option with Ben White, create some competition there, and a backup left back. But the idea that Timber, who was a solid right back before he arrived, is never going to play right back or never be considered as an option for right back, I don't know about that. I mean, I even think that there could be midfield opportunities for Jurrien Timber in some respects. Calafiori gives us an opportunity to, I think, maybe improve the on-the-ball capabilities of the left back over what we get with Tomiyasu. So if you think Tomiyasu is a first or second choice left back for us, I think Calafiori could be an upgrade on that. We'd have to see it, right? You have to see it in your wearing your own shirt, playing your own style, but I think he could be. But it creates a lot of strength and depth in terms of options because we know Tomiyasu can play great on the right. He has for us. We know he can play on the left. Timber, left and right. Calafiori and Tomiyasu can both play center back. White can play right center back. And as a group, now I think you have the strength and depth to get through the number of competitions and the number of games that we're looking at. So is this a share multiple roles, strength and depth move, Paul? Or if you had to guess, let's say he arrived and you had to guess, it's day one, it's the start of the season. Are we missing the forest through the trees here? Mikel's saying, guys, forget everything you knew. Calafiori is our left back. End of story. That's what I'm doing. Like, do you see it that cut and dried, or do you see it more as the strength and depth and as a group?
I see it as deliciously, I don't know, right? There's the logic of it, but there's a bit of emotion here. I'm very wedded to Timber at left back, something we've seen basically never seen in the Premier League apart from for one half and a few minutes. Well, even when he came on as the sub at the end of the season, we brought him on the right-hand side because, well, at that stage, actually, Ben White needed a little relief, so fair enough. We don't know. We absolutely have no clue. And then the other unknown is if Tomiyasu stays fit for most of the season, and especially if you have rotation options, you really have a good chance to keep him mostly fit. Like Tomiyasu's fecking great. We know he is. And imagine a run of form and building some confidence in his body and having a role. You got three. I'd almost peg them pretty close to equal options with a little bit different strengths. I mean, Tomiyasu now knows the Premier League, so he has that over Calafiori. We used to talk about needing a season to bed in. Like Calafiori may need a season to bed in, may not, may need a month to bed in. Those would be three just amazing options. If Timber can do going forward what he showed us in preseason, and for one half of a Premier League game last year, you'd have three options who can play left back, three options who can back up Gabriel at centre back. I would say. I mean, Timber maybe not the most forefront of your mind as a centre back, but could do it. You got Tomiyasu who can do right back, Timber who can do right back. You'd have so many options. You'd have your centre back requirements covered. Now, life throws a curveball at you, and like there's at least one or two of those guys who know what an injury is. But you'd have the durability of our right back and two centre backs across a whole season. Maybe we won't get that going forward, but that only really doesn't leave a lot of opportunity for three really good players. So it'll be in. I mean, the thing in the league is a lot of four centre backs being used across the back line. City are using it. You playing a bit more of a back three with centre backs. Many, many delicious options to see, and I have no clue how it would play out. But Calafiori is a very, very exciting looking player.
Yeah, I mean, and if you set Zinchenko aside for the moment, I mean, he'd be the one left footer. Timber is more right footer. Tomiyasu's right footer. I think. I mean, first of all, you got to hand it to Mikel, right? Because everyone's saying, "Oh, the obvious area where we could strengthen is a center forward or a wide forward," and Mikel's like, "What we're going to do is make the Raya move permanent and sign a center back, left stroke left back." I do think that if you're Mikel and you're saying, how do I make sure that we don't have a drop off from next season? One of the things you'd say is, I have to presume that the best case scenario of Gabriel and Saliba playing every single game in the league will not repeat itself. Or if I want them to be available as much as possible, that I should try to avoid playing them in every single game in the league. And given Tomiyasu's injury track record, we've hardly seen him play center back for us because he's just hardly been available when we might have needed him to. I mean, I think the reason we didn't continue to contend for the league 2 seasons ago is because when Saliba went down, Tomiyasu went down in the same game, and that's why Holding played instead of Tomiyasu. I think Mikel knows that Ben White can play right center back. Calafiori could play left center back. You then have Timber and Tomiyasu as right back options. You have, if Zinchenko or Kivior stay, there's certainly options, but you have Timber and Tomiyasu as left back options. It really does allow Mikel to say, I'm not going to play White through a hip injury. I'm not going to risk it if Saliba says his back's not feeling right. I'm not going to play Gabriel if he's in the red zone. And I'm not going to have myself being vulnerable to my whole season hinges on an always injured Zinchenko and an oft injured Tomiyasu, right? It insulates him, not to mention that whatever you think of Timber, his importance to us coming back from a complete ACL reconstruction is another potential risk. And so between Zinchenko, Tomiyasu, and Timber, you have three players, all of whom you might like and all of whom you might have questions about injury-wise. That at the critical moment when you need them might not be there. So this feels sensible. Again, I will struggle to believe that an Italian player wanted by Juventus is going to leave Serie A for the Premier League until I see it. But there's something here, and I think it does lead us to question some preconceived notions about, well, Timber will just be our left back and White will be our right back and Gabriel and Saliba will be our center backs, and on we go. I don't know for sure that that's the plan. I mean, Zinchenko to Timber feels like a natural progression in that I think Timber can do some Zinchenko stuff at a similar level. I mean, in terms of ball progression, things like that, but maybe do some of the defensive stuff at a superior level. But that's projection. The interesting thing is a lot of people who were close watchers of Timber before he came to us said actually the area where he's going to need to improve is defensively. So we'll see. Last thing on this, do you see any scenario where Timber's role could be more interesting than we think, more advanced, more midfieldy, that there could be something for Timber to do in this team beyond what we might think of as the natural thing? Because obviously there was a very viral clip of him when he was playing for the reserves before he came back, beautifully scoring from the edge of the box. He was in the box the whole game against Everton at the end of the season when admittedly we were desperately chasing that game. He does seem to like to be in the attacking third. Is there any other role for him that you think maybe Mikel has a plan that we haven't necessarily considered yet?
No, I think we're
I
now
agree,
at a
actually.
level. Yeah, I think we're now at a level of a squad level and a specificity level that no, he's not going to buy a player who was a right back, left, and fortunately, it turns out a very competent left back or even an exciting left back, and see him as a midfielder. Like I don't think the demands are. You see when Trent Alexander-Arnold plays in midfield, he's just not up to being a midfielder. He has brilliance, he has skill, he has vision, but what he doesn't do is play in midfield, and he gets swarmed and beaten up and pressed to death, and he doesn't have the time that when he so you look at that player and you say, oh, he could be a great midfielder until he has to play midfield, and he becomes ordinary real quickly because he's got your Conor Gallagher's or whoever it is he's facing all over his ass. Whereas when he drifted in from a right back into midfield, he was a free player. He came in, chose his moment, chose his area, had lighter responsibilities from a midfield standpoint. And like all these things, Zinchenko could be a midfielder. Timber could be a midfield. No, not at this level. You can't.
That's a good
There's
point.
so much. There's so much else you have to do apart from the kind of glory bit that you get to do when you're the free man drifting into midfield, picking your moments, picking your spots. So no, Timber will either be a right back or left back. I think if you're Mikel, he may not quite have the master plan yet. He says, "Look, I need cover at left centre back. I need clear starter capability as a left back because Timber's unproven. Zinchenko is only for certain moments and phases. And Tomiyasu, I don't know if he'll be fit, and he's not the perfect lefter. He's not left-footed. He's not the perfect left back, even though he does a great job." And he looks at Calafiori and says, the right potential to be a great centre back to full on compete with Gabriel and covers my left back option and brings me exciting options in terms of can push upfield, uh, attacking capability. And it's kind of hey, I'll let it play out. The guy's young, might take half a season to adapt. I'll throw him in the mix, and whoever's the best player on the left hand side, if he comes up to speed fast enough to compete with Gabriel, great. Let it play out. But he's at a level and capability and gives him options. He may not have a starting 11 kind of mindset with Calafiori, at least for another season. He's like, let it play out, see who's fit, see who plays well. I've got options, I got rotations. The left centre back will probably be the most dynamic competing area of the pitch with 3, maybe 4 players who can play there. And it's Gabriel's the starting choice at left centre back, but hey, let it play out.
Yeah, and I got to be honest, like whatever you think of this obsession Mikel has with getting more defenders and more defenders and more defenders, if this move comes off, and let's say Akivior moves on, and even as Zinchenko, let's say Zinchenko moves on, but your mileage may vary on whether you think both those things happen. When you look at White, Tomiyasu, Timber as right-sided fullback options, and you look at Gabriel, White, Saliba, Tomiyasu, Calafiori as center back options, and you look at Timber, Calafiori, Tomiyasu, and potentially Zinchenko, if he's still around, as left back options. Like, it's just a really nice group that I think has the qualities and physique and profile that Mikel wants back there. And a combination of players, by the way, all of whom I think at some level can be at the level you need on the ball. Look, I've been a little more, I've probably been a little more critical of Kivior than some, not because I don't think he's a good player. I think
Same. Yep.
level wise, there's some development that still has to happen there. And whether that development should be with us is another story. And I also think he's coming up to a season right now where if he doesn't move, depending how things break, he could be looking at no minutes, especially if we got a Calafiori. So that's not good for him. It's not good for us. But I think if you take him out of the mix and you just look at Calafiori, Timber, Saliba, Gabriel, Tomiyasu, on the ball, that's a pretty slick group that can play physical football, that can play technical football. They can have it both ways. It does look pretty good. And so I think Mikel can say, okay, that's done. These are early mid-20s age players who are all the profile I need. And Mikel, you can stop buying defenders, okay?
That's city levels, right? In
Yeah, oh
terms
yeah.
of
Oh
starting
yeah.
11, the first 14, your first 18. He'll look at the kind of the back end of the pitch and say, right, I'm good. He needs a backup keeper. Like Ramsdale may be sticking around for a season, but if not, maybe backup keeper is the one thing he needs to do in that area. But he's covered. He's good.
Yeah, and I think the guy's making something like, I'm not kidding, like 15,000 euros a week. So you could put him on 80 and probably be giving him more than Juve's offering him. Have room to raise him up if you need to down the road. Leave room for wages. So all things being equal, if it's a move that comes off, I really like it, and that group seems solid. Let's shift to a couple other things quickly. The Raya thing, I think there's very little here. We knew this was coming, but the Raya move has been made official. And if you read into some quotes that Mikel gave in a recent interview to ESPN, and we'll come to those quotes later. I want to talk about some of those specifically, but he was sort of asked about the transfer window, and he made the point that we had some restrictions, and those have passed now, which I think we understand means that June 30th period, we just didn't have a lot of room to operate. We have a lot more room to operate now. The first thing we go and do is finalize the Raya move. We knew this was coming, but it obviously now puts the spotlight on Ramsdale maybe moving on, getting that money in, really trying to free things up. Because also he's not on a small wage. We know he's on his second contract with Arsenal. And we have a lot of these players who got to a second contract, and now we're trying to shift them in that situation. So any comments on the Raya move? I mean, I guess he's a player who, if that's our future keeper, I can live with it. But ironically, I find myself in the same boat with Raya that I was with Ramsdale to some extent, where I appreciate him and I like him and I think there are good things about him. And yet you could convince me there's a level we could go up at that position still if that was the plan.
Yeah. So my one thought on Raya, I think my thought is he was a loanee for us. And although he knew this was coming and happening, he had that in his mind. It's just different when you're a loanee and you're not at the club. And he had the Ramsdale thing, the kind of
Popular incumbent.
yeah, that distance, the bit of distance between him, the club, the fans. What was it for at least half a season, and then okay, second half of the season, we knew what it was. We knew he was sticking around. But this will be the first season he goes into where he's here, he's part of it, he's established. Um, he knows the club want him and are keeping him. He knows this is his club. I think there's every chance he'll play at a level higher than last season because I liked what the move was in terms of how it allowed us to play. I could see that part of it last year. I didn't think he had a brilliant season. I thought it was a little mixed, if they were to tell me this is our keeper for the next 4 or 5 years and wherever we go with Premier League challenges and with Champions League, you're going to have to live with this guy. Last season's keeper was decent, not amazing, not astounding. The way he plays, I think, was more exciting than how he played, in what it allowed us to do and be more confident playing with feet, all the stuff we know about the distribution, the fast throw out, the tempo, the more gears, more comfort on the ball, more aggressive high line. It's more the way he played that I liked last year. Um, But this year we may see a better goalkeeper
Mm.
at that same position. And so that's what I'm hoping for. He now feel he can settle in, feel the confidence, feel kind of the love, the support. It's all nailed down. He's not on trial, even if that wasn't exactly the arrangement. It must have felt a bit kind of distant, at least his relationship with the crowd, with the still things to be resolved, still the Ramsdale thing. Yeah, I expect we could see a more confident, more settled, more aggressive goalkeeper who's just settled in. You know, fewer mistakes maybe, but that's not really it. It's more what he does the 97% of the game in terms of his presence. I'm looking forward to seeing what a first full season settled in, official, signed up season with David Raya looks like, and then we'll judge, do we need to go beyond that next time round?
Yeah, I agree with a lot of that broadly. I mean, there are certain things that I think people will always struggle with. I think I read that he was the shortest keeper shortest starting keeper in the league. And there are going to be people that are just going to struggle with that. I think the funny thing about that is he really impresses me the way he comes for crosses and the way
I know
he
you never shut up about it.
well, because it's real good. It's real good. And so, I mean, the things that you would typically associate with a shorter keeper where you'd be like, well, we just seem really vulnerable with balls that go into the box. That's not been the case. And that would typically be what would worry me. When we had Ospina, for example, like it really was the case, but that had a little bit to do with the fact that he loved to stand behind the goal line, which, from my limited understanding of goalkeeping is not the preferred positioning for that kind of situation. So, yeah, look, this move just makes sense. And in general, unless you can go out and find your Allison, and I don't think that's very easy to do, and Liverpool paid a fortune for him, then I think you're fine with this. You don't need to change your goalkeeper every season. Although I will say, Clive and I in the last episode did a "Who would we buy off our rivals" segment where we talked about who we'd buy off Liverpool and City and United and Chelsea. And I have to admit, I just totally blanked on saying Allison from Liverpool, and that would have been a really good shout. So,
Allison, I
exactly.
know this world is
That's a hit song that you're probably hearing on your AM radio channels today as you tune in. So, all right, let's move to one other piece of news, and that's Sambi Lokonga. It looks like he's going to make a loan move to Sevilla with an obligatory option if he hits certain milestones at around 15 million euros. People pull their hair out about how much we get for selling, but honestly, my biggest thing is the simple fact that we don't sell and we hoard players and we hold on too long. I think you have to at some point get their wages off the book and recoup something. This feels like a move that was inevitable. I have this theory on Sambi that Sambi could have been a good player for us, maybe even in the 8, probably not in central midfield, but in the 8, the way we use the left-sided 8, and not a final ball player, but a shuttler, a player who shuttles from deep midfield to the attacking third. And I think he has good qualities. And we saw at Luton sometimes he really was able to shine for them. He arrived at a time when we were a mess in midfield and we were still figuring things out. And I don't think it worked for him. He needed probably a more secure structure to step into. He fell apart a little bit in the second half against Liverpool in a game. And I don't think his Arsenal career has really ever come back from that. So sometimes with players, it's just wrong place, wrong time. I think that's the case for Sambi. I think mentality-wise, he really struggled with not playing as much as he wanted to, and so it's probably the best for everyone. Do you have any thoughts on Sambi moving on and that deal not working out? And are you animated in particular by how much we may or may not get for him?
Yeah, isn't mandatory option one of those oxymoron things? It'll be interesting to see what the clauses are that make it obligatory. But if we sell him for 15 million and we get a loan fee, that's good, I guess. Didn't we buy him for 15 million? Do I
I
remember
think it
that
was a
right?
bit more than that.
But
It was well, let's
I
see.
think it might have been.
I
It's
thought
one
it
of
was more like
those.
20 or
No, God,
18.
no. Oh, okay.
Not that huge.
Maybe.
It looks like we bought him for 17.5 million.
Okay.
If you believe transfer market. So 17.5 million euros, and this is 15 million euro obligatory loan if they trigger all the triggers. So You know, I mean,
I,
it's not the end of the world.
I'm going to not believe transfer market and remember it my way, which was 15, because that's
Cool.
very neat.
Hmm.
He just wasn't physical enough for the Premier League, I don't think. He's a nice player, tidy. To your point, more the second pivot. And we've moved away from a second pivot. And nice, tidy player. I always liked him, just never saw that physicality. He's not extraordinary enough in his skills to hold down a place in midfield without that athleticism, that dynamic. It's not hard to picture him getting overrun in midfield by your Onanas running past him, kind of thing.
Mm.
He ain't catching up to anybody, and his skills weren't extraordinary enough that he could override that. So nice player. I think he should find another league where it's not quite as athletic, physical, and pounding. And like there's just a level of athleticism that I think is like you take Premier League teams from a decade ago or 15 years ago, and I think they'd have their minds blown if they played any of the top half teams. Just how relentless the physicality, the athleticism of all 11 players across the pitch are these days. So I think it's just a physical level too far for him.
Yeah, and that's honestly that's probably it. It is really, I think one of the hardest things to do in football is to be able to scout and evaluate off the ball performance. And off the ball performance is a key indicator of whether you can be success at Arsenal, right? And there are certain players that I have an opinion of where I think off the ball they're just not good enough, and you can't really settle that argument, right? Because no one can really point to the moment off the ball they weren't good enough. I think a player who has I've at times been frustrated with off the ball, for example, is Emil Smith Rowe. Um, I think Sambi falls into that category as well. So you know, I agree with you that from a physicality standpoint, it's probably not a fit. Anyway, feels like a reasonable move. Another real quick one, Mika Biereth. It looks like we've sold
Mm.
him to Sturmgras for 5 million or 4 million, something like that, and 4 million pounds. I think honestly, when a player's going to a club at that level, that probably indicates that they're not anywhere near ready to be at our level. And those
Mm.
kinds of clubs don't pay much more than that. So I think that is almost certainly a fine move. And I don't have a problem with it. This is where I think the club can be better, is not getting hung up on those kind of players, waiting for them to arrive, keep them around, give them a second contract. And then suddenly you're paying someone who should be at Sturmgras £100,000 a week, and Sturmgras can't buy him anymore. And now you don't know what to do with them. You move them, you collect the money, you have a sell on clause maybe, and away you go. You know, heck, we're probably going to make that much or more off the Amari Hutchinson sale that Chelsea just made. So I am much more concerned, Paul, about Arsenal being willing to move players on and look to the future and get the next crop in and get the next signings in than I am about whether they got the absolute best fee for the guys they're moving out. Because in my estimation, to repeat myself, it's the failure to move the guys and being wedded to our valuations potentially that has held us back more than selling for less than they are supposedly worth.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think now that the squad, the team, the club is at a particular level, the window for players to look like they were ever going to be part of the Arsenal plan is very narrow. And for me, like I always liked Mika Biereth when he came in. I watched, whatever you could find on the internet. So I watched quite a bit of academy stuff around that time, and he was a proper striker. Like that was his role. He there's no confusing what he does, and he's good and he's tidy and he's a finisher. And like I always thought he was going to have a career at some level, but he never seems to have been part of the Arsenal thinking. And I wonder if back at, under Wenger, 7, 8 years ago, I think he would have been part of the mix, and he would have been on the summer tours and he would have got a look in. He would have been part of the squad, and there would have been options for him. But has he ever been part of any conversations about, anything to do with the first team or the extended view of the first team? And like, there's a 2 or 3 level, uh, 3 class system kind of going on with the academies, where you'd have your Nwaneris and a few others like Kosher Dewberry, who he's moving on to other things, but he could have been in and around. I could see him in the mix for the future with Arsenal. It hasn't panned out that way, But Beereth seems to have been, in our thinking anyway, in the level below that. And then there's a whole bunch of players in the academy who are just, they're there as academy fodder, unfortunately, because you need enough players, and they'll hopefully we're preparing them for lives in the broader game. But Beereth was in that interesting group where I think in another time could have been part of our thinking. You're right. And the reason I say it is because, to your point, that's just how it's going to be from here on in, at least for the foreseeable. And uh, the academy structure is kind of a weird one, because if you're a Beereth and you're looking at your career, you got to think, is Arsenal the place to go, or is it a West Ham, or is it a Nottingham Forest? And I think decisions will be made differently. If I'm Mikel Beereth, do I come to Arsenal? If it's today's Arsenal, I don't know. It's kind of very, very hard to see. Chelsea do this thing, and they did it with Amari Hutchinson, where they gave him a little bit of a look, but they gave him a career path and got real money for him, and he's in a good situation here. We got to get, maybe it's us looking at greener pastures, as it seems to be with Chelsea, but finding those careers for those players. I mean, we took a long time to find something for Mika Beereth. He had injuries, etc. They were very quick to get Amari Hutchinson a good gig, and them some good money, and him a good contract. I think they're still better at that kind of trading in that tier just below their first 11, getting gigs for players out there, getting a loan system that shows them off. Maybe it's my perception, but I think we've still a lot to do on the academy side. We haven't pivoted away from the Wenger model of, actually, we want you to play for our team, as opposed to Chelsea's model, which is, we're in the business of reselling academy players for good fees.
Yeah. And look, ultimately, this is a record fee, if you believe the internet, for Mikel Beereth. And that's the thing you have to remember when you're selling to these kinds of clubs, right? Is the numbers that we associate with good transfer fees do not apply to the Austrian Bundesliga. So, record fee, we get a sell-on clause, he moves on, and away we go. Not much more to say about that. I think I do want to say a bit about this Mikel Arteta interview that he gave to James Ollie at ESPN. And there's a couple of really interesting things in here, I think. I want to start with maybe his comments on where it slipped away. He was asked, when you look at where it slipped away, is it as simple as pointing to Aston Villa at home, or does it run deeper than that? I'm going to read the quote here because I think it's interesting. There's a lot we can tease out. He says, the small margins. We have the game against Villa, and when you look at the expected goals of what we generate just throughout the game, we should win it. But we don't. So efficiency in the box was a dictator of success when we are so dominant like we are right now in many games. You have decisions as well. They are not in your hands, and they can take a point or 2 points or 3 points away from you, and that can decide the title. Of course, we know about refereeing decisions. He doesn't linger on that, which, fair enough. At the end, we are going to have to be that good that our worst version is going to have to be much better than the best version of the opponent. This is what we are going to try to do. In order to do that, we are going to have to dominate a lot of things that are going to be difficult to identify with your eyes when you watch a football match. I'll leave it there. Gosh, there's a lot in there that's interesting. So, first of all, the thing I want to say is the reference to expected goals. We just know this data is bleeding into everything in the game, and it's no surprise to me that Mikel is across this because he wants to be across everything that can make us better. But I like that he's across it because it says to me that if he's following the data along with his eyes, he will quickly identify where the areas are that we can improve. And he says it in the next sentence. Efficiency in the box was a dictator of success when we're so dominant like we are right now in many games. This to me is a whole ball of wax, Paul. And I'm really curious what you think of that particular part of the comment. We'll come to another part of it in a moment. Efficiency in the box. Is this a case of Mikel feeling that we need that bigger target, that, whether it's Kai or someone else coming in who can knock a ball down and, give us some dominance where we can fire balls into the box? Is it a case of not feeling he's getting enough efficiency out wide? The left-hand side certainly didn't perform the way we might like, although I think it's fair to say Trossard was extremely efficient in terms of his goal output. Left 8 maybe was a player that was more of a midfield shuttler and less of a final third player. How do you think he thinks about this idea of efficiency in the box was a dictator of success, what would, if you were sitting next to Mikel Arteta and he said we need to be more efficient in the box, what do you think he might be thinking, and what are you thinking?
So that's the bit I struggle with most, because I'm hung up on the false nine thing. Like I think if you think I want a better finisher, you're like either you're getting the world's greatest player or you're trading off something. So if he's a better finisher, he's not as good at false nining, movement, all those kinds of things. I'm inclined to look for him to be saying, and I'm not saying he is saying this, but here's what my bias looks for me to see in the words, that he wants a team that matures and grows into being in the box and making better decisions as a team. That could be as much about the left eight as who's playing striker. You get my point. My original point on this is you get those opportunities by having Kai Havertz as your false nine, making the movements. Like you replace Kai Havertz with a more efficient finisher. Is he able to do everything Kai Havertz could do to get you into the box where the efficient finisher gets his chance? Is the answer, what are you giving up to get? Look at what City have given up to get Haaland, right? It's You can see trade-offs in that, right? They have so much opportunity to create chances to get Haaland in the box. They think it's worth it. I also think it doesn't make them a better team. It just makes them a more dangerous team in the Champions League for the later stages. I think that's why he did the Haaland thing. I wonder City think if Pep Guardiola thinks today's City is a better team than he had 3 or 4 or 5 years ago across a season, or at the level they play, or the style. I don't mean aesthetically. I mean in his evaluation of the football. I don't think this is the best City we've seen with Haaland in the team. I don't particularly love it or like it. I don't like anything around the Haaland thing. It's all about scoring a couple of goals, and I think it's taken down their level of play and their level of creativity. But they could absorb that because they had so much ability to generate. They're so much better than most teams that play in the Premier League, basically. Um, and so, what I look for in Mikel's words, and hopefully we'll get a quote or two more from him on it, or somebody will get to this. I think it's more about the progression of the team. And yes, he'll look to add a player who adds some clinical finishing from left or centrally, um, in the attacking third. But I tend to think it's more about the level, the situation, the decisioning, the the movement, getting into better positions, being more ready when you get there, growing as a team to being used to finding yourself in the box and finishing. It's almost about coaching and development, but also, of course, there's going to be the other side of the coin. Another player who adds some finishing. Whoever comes in the attacking end will be a good finisher in Mikel's standpoint. It doesn't necessarily mean the big man up front, the Haaland, the Sheshko, or however you want to pronounce it, or whoever's on the market. We've seen his finishing. Uh, there's. I don't. I so often don't think that there's one player who does it. There's not many Haalands to the Deutschmark, and even that is a trade-off.
Can I say something about the Sheshko thing, by the way? I was lower on him than many in terms of when we were linked. And I said, look, I can see the ceiling for this player and I see the qualities he has. I still think he's too raw. I still think he needs to develop. I think what he's chosen to do, staying where he is absolutely right. I think he is a player who, much like Joe Willock when he was on loan at Newcastle, went on a hot streak to finish the season, and that's got people looking at him, but I don't think he's ready. I see the qualities, but I don't think he's ready. I now think that the narrative around Šeško is way too low on the player. He missed a chance against Portugal, and people have him as a bum now. And I will tell you this: I think Šeško could go to the top of the game. I just don't think he's there yet, and I don't think we have the minutes to give him to get there. So I thought he was the wrong move for us, at least right now. But I am now, I think, Every stock is a buy at a certain price, right? I don't think he was a buy at the price he was 3 weeks ago, but I think at the price he is now, he's a buy for me. I think he's better than people have messed. But I am fascinated by this idea of efficiency in the box and how we get that, because Paul, I don't think anybody's got a sense of where we're going with the attacking transfer side of things. But clearly Mikel thinks that efficiency in the box is the dictator. I mean, he says it was the dictator of success. And if that's the case, surely he's going to want to do something in that area. And it's just staggering that even at this point, I don't think anybody knows what that's going to be.
I just like the counterpoint to what I just said is Isak, right? He's not available. We won't be able to get him. But he's the player that makes the total sense of what Arteta just said, because there's not much trade-off there, right? He's more precise. He's more of a finisher. But he still does most of what we've seen Kai Havertz do. So, like, as a player, I'm like, oh yeah. The problem is, I don't think in one sense, there aren't many Haalands where it's worth the trade-off. On the other hand, there aren't many Isaks where there's not really any trade-off. He can still do all the false nining, all the connecting, all the running in behind, and he's still a more precise finisher than anybody else we would play centrally on the team. Unless there's that kind of unicornish kind of player, I look to seeing the team getting better. And, I could, for your reasons, I could see a Sesko, a player that evolves over a couple of seasons but doesn't solve next season for us. So I think there's two parts to it. I think he would love to find his own Isak, but I think he also means the team in general growing into being good in the box, creating more opportunities, using more of this movement, being less surprised when they find themselves in the box and putting the ball in back of net.
It's tough. I mean, does it mean you want more firepower, like an Eze at left 8, where you just have more shots and more chances to score from your attacking midfield positions? Does he mean less of a Gabriel Jesus and more of an end product monster where you really trust them to finish? Is it
Is it Gundogan at left 8? I think is a very relevant response, because that's kind of what I've been thinking our left 8 really looks like. And just that kind of player, that kind of presence coming into the box addresses, again, both sides of it, of the team getting better and more effective finishing in the box, and actually having one of the players who ends up in the box just been better putting the ball in back of net.
Yeah, I mean, efficiency in the box doesn't necessarily have to mean like just more goals. Of course you want more goals, but it can mean getting shots away quicker. It can mean more directness, right? Someone who's more of a shot monster in the box. Like I'm really fascinated, but the fact that he has said that to me suggests that he has a thought about, he wouldn't say it if he didn't think he knew how to fix it. I don't think you say we need to be more efficient in the box. I have no idea how you get there, having literally just said that myself, but I don't think Mikel would say it unless he had an idea. Now I want to move on to the other part of this quote. So he says, at the end, we're going to have to be that good that our worst version is going to have to be much better than the best version of the opponent. Okay, that sounds great. Easier said than done. And we could talk about, does that mean that players' repeatability of their performances has to go up? Or does he mean this is why you buy, for example, a Calafiori? This is why you move on a Sambi and you bring another player? Because your worst version, meaning there is no lineup we put out, there is no group we put out where we can't be better than the best version. I think you could look at that both ways, but I want to get to the more interesting thing, because this is inscrutable to me. This is what we are going to try to do. And in order to do that, we are going to have to dominate a lot of things that are going to be difficult to identify with your eyes when you watch a football match. I'll leave it there.
I love it.
It's totally inscrutable. And it makes me wonder, is he really thinking mentality there? Is he really thinking we have to dominate the way we, things that you don't see with your eyes? What are those things? The way we intimidate in the tunnel, the way we, get inside the players' heads, the way we communicate with referees. What I mean, maybe I'm missing it. Maybe it's literally things that we don't see with our eyes, but they are tactical, the way we take a throw in or something like that. What do you think these things are that we have to dominate that are difficult to identify with your eyes when you watch a football match?
I think it's totally scrutable, but that's because I'm not very smart, so I'm very limited in what I can look at here.
Makes sense.
Shape, 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 shape. So much shape, so much pattern, so much movement. That requires certain
I'm
players.
not gonna lie to you. That sounded a little Trumpy. So much shape. We're gonna have the best shape. Is so much shape. You're gonna be tired of having shape. Anyway, go
Look, to
ahead.
give Donald Trump his due. No, I'll
No,
stop there.
that's like the drill tweet revising my tweet about ISIS. You do not have to give it to them. All right, please go ahead.
Because that's the only way you can do it. It can't be mentality. Everybody's got mentality, goes up and down. It can't be just all the good players, because like good players have ups and downs, and like he's talking about something that he can bank on, and it's your worst day will be the day where you don't really have the ball, you don't really have the control, like where you can't rely on being great. It's kind of you've hit your lowest denominator as a team in terms of how you're playing. But what you do, the things that don't rely on being tuned in and focused and all that kind of shit, when you're having your bad days, the basics are all there. And I think it's all about the basics, which is how you press, when you press, that as a collective team, it's now, it's the muscle memory stuff, that shape thing. It's why he always builds at the back first, why he always wants. We've seen it in his whole time. We think of it as automatically, oh, well, that's kind of a defensive thing if you're making sure that the back end of your pitch is. It's not. It's like that's how you build your game. You can't have a team that's built from the front. You could have a successful season, but you're not going to win every fucking game if it's your attack you're relying on and the midfield so and the defense is a bit patchy, and that starts to get into how the team feels. And before you know it, your whole season starts to erode from that. How many teams do we see start off attacking and exciting in August, September, October, November? Then it gets to the winter. It kind of peters out because it's not built on anything. I think it's all about it's the level of players who have the intelligence and have the mentality. And I think it's always why Smith Rowe has been seen to struggle under Arteta. Because to your point, the off ball, it's just he needs guys who are just totally built into the hive mind of shape with without the ball transitions, when we attack, when we press, we lose the ball. Is everybody in the spots? Is everybody switched on at that moment so we recover immediately? So it's all that stuff. He looks at our season. I think two things happens when Mikel Arteta looks at our season last season and every season. He looks at it and he says, "What? Where are the levels of play in the three? If you want to simplify the three areas of the pitch: defense, midfield, and attack, where." I am frustrated that we're at level 2 or level 3 when I got level 4 and level 5 I'm trying to get to. What players do I need to bring in to support that? But it's not about the players. It's been the players good enough to support the levels he wants the team to play at. That's what he's really talking about, with and without the ball and transitions. And he's frustrated as fuck, even though we're happy with the performance that he sees. It's one of those things. He sees everything we're still not doing yet. That's where he's trying to get to. And he
Yeah.
sees a couple of players and profiles that he's missing at times that stop us doing extra special things. But mostly he sees a collective that still needs to go up a level. And he sees that and then he'll look at a couple of games like the season before. He looked at the City game where we got beat, and you felt he went into the summer saying, I'm going to fix that. I'm going to fix that with players and how we come out next year. I think he'll look at last season and he'll look at the Bayern game and he'll say, I'm going to fix that. I'm going to fix how we got done down the left-hand side by our left-hand side by Sané. I'm going to fix how we didn't have an attacking threat to bother them across two legs. And that'll be the game, those two games that are burned into his mind that he will fix this summer.
And by the way, it wouldn't surprise me if we bought a Bayern player. Like I think that's in the offing. Kimmich wouldn't surprise me. Sané wouldn't surprise me either. I think there is a thing that happens to coaches when they see a player up close in a game that was at a very high level, and especially one where they weren't successful, where sometimes they say that player could come fix something that I have. I saw the problems he created for me. I want him creating those problems for my opposition.
Yeah. I think he'll look at Aston Villa and say the kind of our worst day, their best day, our overall levels, we should have been able to see that out. And you look at Bayern and say, we need some additional capabilities we didn't have. It's not about our overall level. It's about we couldn't do certain things to them on the day. We didn't have the players. We didn't have the depth at left back in our attack to hurt them in ways they need to be hurt. That's where I want my personnel upgrades.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, it's fascinating. A couple other things from this interview that were interesting. He was asked if he thought 90 points was the target. He said it's 114 points, and you go from there.
I love him.
I'll put it this way. If we get 114 points, City will get 115. I don't know mathematically how that would happen, but trust me.
The thing about Arteta is he doesn't blink for that shit. He's so wired into his philosophy, his approach. It's so fucking beautifully crafted. He wouldn't even blink. That's not I need to come up with something clever to say. That is his mindset, his mind view is so fucking spot on, so perfectionist.
He was asked, did it take you a long time to get over it? It meaning not winning the title. He said, I don't want to get over it, which I like. And that was the mindset that he said when he spoke to the fans on the last day. Basically said, this isn't, don't forget this. This isn't where we want to be. We want to win the title. Don't settle for this, basically. But I thought that was good. And he said, look, right after full time, the players were saying, what do we have to do to get the next step? What do we have to do to get those couple extra points? So everybody seemed really focused on that. And that leads to a last point here that he made. He was asked, I assume people know this, but you may not know that there's a bit of a preseason, a mini preseason happening in Marbella right now. And Arteta was asked why Marbella is it sort of a mini preseason before the proper preseason. And he said, it is a long break for some of the players that haven't had international football. And nowadays we need top level athletes at the level that we are competing and the schedule that we have. So we believe it was the right thing to do, to bring them in a little bit earlier and start connecting with the team to check physical levels and to start to get a good preparation. They still have some time off, some downtime to enjoy. Marbella gives you a bit of everything, and I think it's working really well. If he wants me in Marbella, happy to go. I do like this, and I think it's a reminder. I think for a lot of us, we get so hung up on rotation and rest, and they need rest, and they need rest. And what we're learning is periodization is changing, and actually the elite athlete with a relentless schedule needs to maintain a certain degree of repetition and regularity around keeping their body active. And I think Mikel making sure that these players don't just fall out of shape. I think what Mikel wants to avoid, if I read between the lines here, is a bunch of players that come back to preseason out of shape and you're spending the first couple of weeks of preseason just getting their bodies into shape. Once upon a time, you'd see players come back to preseason overweight and out of shape and had to get back into playing shape. And I'm guessing Mikel doesn't want to spend preseason getting physical fitness. He wants to spend it working on the tactics and working on the plan for the season. So maybe this helps him do that with the players who aren't playing right now.
Yeah, I have very fond memories of you losing your mind over Willian because he had that training belt on, and you were like,
"No, Willian looked like me. Let's put it that way, okay? And I mean that in the most derogatory way possible. And he was wearing the shirt I'm wearing right now. It was this shirt.
He was wearing a training belt, Elliot.
But why was the belly hanging over the training belt? Is the question. And look. Absolutely love him for that. If I had all the money in the world and I was young and I was famous and I was successful, I'd be eating. That's what I'd be doing. You better believe someone would be putting a piece of steak in my mouth. So yeah, no problem. Instead of me having to lift the steak and put it in my own mouth like a plebe. So yeah, I think that this is an interesting thing he's doing. I'm wondering what you think of the Marbella meetup, and it says something too about the culture at the club and the connection of the players. Because I don't think you can make them do this. You know what I mean? Their willingness to do this, I think, is a reflection of what it means to them. And just a reminder again that Ben White doesn't take football seriously, but is willing to go have a preseason. Like, I don't know what to tell you. The guy is a consummate professional. Any thoughts on preseason in Marbella?
Yeah, well, I get it that you can't just leave people flopping around for half the summer. What's weird is that I have no sense of. Can.
That's usually what people do.
Yeah. Well, what's weird is that I've no sense for how weird this is because every summer now there used to be a real rhythm to the summers whether there was a tournament or there wasn't a tournament, but they screw around with the season every year with changing the length, the starting point, that you don't have a sense for how weird this is. On any, I don't anyway. I've lost the tempo of what a preseason should be. This feels a little early, but is it really that early? Like, what did they know? What did they used to do back in the day? But you can see why they wouldn't want these guys hanging around. And if it's a chance to meet up with Santi Cazorla and just kind of sprinkle a little bit of, could he join our coaching staff? I mean, talk about a feel good thing if we got him into the mix at some stage, reuniting with his mate Mikel Arteta, for whom he said the most positive things were when they were in the club together. I mean, it would be kind of, there is a romance to if we can get Cazorla into the extended coaching team in a year or so when he retires. So nice to see the lads down there and keeping them out of trouble, keeping them busy, and
yeah.
keep them fit.
Well, Arsenal have literally just put out a video of them training. They're looking good. They're looking handsome and fit. Timber is there. Ben White is there. They were shooting football into a tiny little goal. White, of course, the ball rolls into the goal. Odegaard missed. So maybe that's the box efficiency. Maybe Odegaard's done. He's done at this level.
They need to make those goals smaller and smaller. You know what I mean? Really, really.
This one's pretty small.
Really tiny goals to become more efficient.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, last thing that I thought was interesting. He was asked about LA and going to LA and playing in LA, and basically said, "Look, it's become a bit of a second home for us. It's one of the best stadiums in the world. We get to go see the owners." It was very complimentary stuff about the Kroenkes. Obviously, smart comments for a guy who is finalizing the negotiation on a new contract. By the way, wouldn't give anything away on that, but it sounds like that's about to happen. But then he was asked about the pitch and the pitch at playing at SoFi and stuff like that. I thought this was an interesting take. The conditions are different. The pitch is different. The opponent is different. The weather is different. The stadium is different. The traveling is different. If you want to be the best team in the world, you're going to have to adapt to all those things on the day. So it's good practice for us to achieve that. I think that just shows the depth. Look, I don't want to be a sycophant. I don't want to be obsequious about Mikel Arteta. He's not the first guy to say smart stuff, but it just goes to show you where his mind is. Because I think the average ordinary manager might be like, the pitches are a little different, but it's preseason. We're there to get our fitness up and, we'll just navigate the pitch and hope everyone comes through it. He's saying this is an opportunity for us to build a new skill, a skill to get on a plane, wake up in a new place, sleep in a hotel, play in a different kind of pitch, a thing that we have to get better at being able to do and increases our ability to adapt to different situations. He really does have a mindset that I think is tilted towards seeing how you can take different situations and turn them into teachable moments. It's just sort of a unique perspective, I think. Maybe I'm overdoing it.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think that's a couple of things there. Like, he always has this high performance mindset.
Yeah.
And when you put that together with his Zoom calls with his buddies in kind of rugby and other disciplines
Basketball,
and stuff. Yeah. And like, it's about getting a different high performing mindset. He never leaves it. He never blinks. You ask him a question, his answers always come from the same place. It's why at the end of the day, although he and Guardiola are from the same school and philosophy and principles, they will end up in a somewhat different place, because when you get to the final couple of steps and you're making your own moves, they're very different people emotionally. And they will end up, when they get to the critical decisions, when Arteta reaches the zenith with his team, when he's got the final pieces in place, he will make different choices, because when it's on the line, you end up going with your gut, and he's a different character to Guardiola. So I think the divergence will become more apparent when you get to those last few pieces of the puzzle, what an Arteta version of positional play is versus a Guardiola one. They're very fucking different people at the end of the day, no matter how much time they spent together.
Yeah. Well, last but certainly not least, wouldn't want to get out of here without getting your thoughts just on the upcoming quarterfinals in the Euros and maybe any England thoughts. I think it's funny how you normalized having football every day, by the way. I woke up today and I felt like offended that I didn't have a game to watch or two games to watch. Like, where's my football? And the tournament, when it gets to this stage, you really start to feel the loss of the daily cadence of football. I'm sure Phil Costa doesn't feel that loss. He feels the sleep he's getting from not having to do a pod every single day for every single week. But I mean, some really fantastic football matches coming up, and just really excited to watch them. Obviously, there's the England of it, but if we're being honest, Spain, Germany, and Portugal, France tomorrow are mouth-watering. Then we get maybe the less favored ties, which have often been the better ones in this tournament. But any thoughts on the quarterfinal and maybe England, Switzerland? And would there be a tiny part of you that, even though I find myself rooting for England, wouldn't mind seeing Rice and Saka done by the 6th of July and having just that little extra time to get ready?
Yeah, look, I wouldn't be me without thinking. Actually, one of the most interesting parts of it is just watching Xhaka playing against England, playing against those two guys, but just generally on the big stage, pulling the strings in a team that seemed much better in possession than what we've seen from England so far. So England are still very ploddy, very slow moving the ball. So it's not a mouth-watering fixture, but it's full of intrigue for me, I think. I think Netherlands, Turkey could be just roll up the sleeves and go for it. I think, Netherlands really woke up towards the end of the Romania game. Turkey are super exciting. Lots of passion, lots of heat. And the game being in Germany means huge support for them. It's not too far away from Holland either, or sorry, from the Netherlands either.
Yep, there you
So
go. It's better.
it'll be a lively one.
Yep.
They're all great. Spain, Germany, what's not to love there? Portugal, France, that might be the one that might be a little less. Somehow I feel we still haven't seen France really lighted up. They're pretty conservative in many ways. So just my gut feeling is that's the one I'm least. I'll be watching them all. That's the one I won't be surprised if it's a bit of a snooze fest. England could be, but I'll be intrigued just with the matchups anyway. So I won't find that hard to watch. We'll see what France is, but yeah, 3 of the 4 should be corkers, I think.
Yeah, and I'm torn because I'd like to see England go on and win it. I'd like to see Saka and Rice get that happiness, that joy. Obviously, I'd love to see Kai do it with Germany. So yeah, I have rooting interest in a couple of these different teams. Saliba for France, who's been brilliant for them. But the one thing I won't miss, I certainly won't miss the discourse around the England team and how it's just broken out in a sort of tribal favorite player warfare, internecine warfare. Like, could do without that. So we'll see. I'm looking forward to it. Last little thing here. Manchester United have announced a new deal with Ten Hag. Only makes sense, obviously. Only makes sense.
It's great.
Would you, if I think it's about 150 to 1, like £5, £5 on them getting relegated, or no? No chance.
I think I have some pounds somewhere.
Mm.
No, they won't get relegated.
You sure?
Yeah.
I guess the teams at the bottom are probably too bad, but I think that there's like an outside chance. No chance at all.
No, I mean, would you root for them to get relegated? I think the answer. I know the answer. Or just to be just about that right level of mediocre that they just can't make the changes they need.
No,
A bit like
relegated.
Okay.
Absolutely relegated. I mean, the PSR issues they'd have then, and like Joe, yeah, relegated completely.
I'm
Out of the
more
league for a whole season.
I'm more the Sisyphus rolling the stone up the hill and back down again thing that they're doing at the moment with Ten Hag, where like, oh, they're crap. They're going to have to fire him. Oh, you won an FA Cup. Oh, they're just about bad enough to, stay the course, United. Your wisdom, your brilliance is about to pay off with the moves you're making. Your marginal losses approach to football that so revolutionized it.
All right, so then here's a better question. They currently sit 14th in the alphabetical order. If you're a United fan, would you just take that now as the end of the season?
Would you take a meteor strike on the earth, destroying everybody you love, to cement 14th so that you don't get relegated? Yes, I would.
Okay, good. I think we can leave it there. Tim's History Pod will come up. Please check out the transfer prediction episode that Clive and I did. Scouting videos next week. The only reason we didn't do one this week we've done so many scouting videos, we used up our Y Scout minutes. If you don't know, by the way we do these scouting videos, the video's on the screen. Same with our rewatch videos of the games. The game's on the screen. We do the analysis with our faces real tiny and the video real big, so you can see the part that matters. So hope you give that a try. Looking forward to seeing a lot of people in LA coming up in a few weeks here, and if not there, somewhere in the near future, so we can toast to one another and celebrate what will hopefully be a very exciting season. Paul's on Twitter. Pause my pants. Thanks, pause. For some reason, every time you do the woohoo, it clips out. I didn't hear it. Can you do it?
Woohoo!
There you go. Thank you. My name's Elliot. Block me on Twitter. Gunner. We love you, and we'll talk to you after Arsenal 10 transfer window.